Hello, everyone, and welcome to Mind Body Green's beauty podcast, Clean Beauty School. I am your host and Mind Body Green's beauty director, Alexandra Engler. On this podcast, we explore beauty through the lens of well-being. And on today's episode, I am having on Ciara Imani May. She is the founder of the company called Rebundle. And what Rebundle is creating is really inspiring and revolutionary. It's the first plant-based, non-toxic hair extensions. And I cannot wait to learn more and, just hear about what inspired Ciara to create this product. So, without further ado, I would just love to introduce her to you all. Ciara, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. And like I said, I'm really excited to hear your story. This is the first time you and I are connecting, but when I got the email about Rebundle, I was just, so my interests were so piqued. So I'm so eager to learn more about you. And in the spirit of doing that, what was your journey into the beauty industry? What's your story?
Yeah. So I did not have any plans to start a beauty company or be in the beauty space. I studied business management in undergrad and social entrepreneurship in grad school. So I knew I would eventually start a business, but I had no idea or inspiration around what kind. I've always been very entrepreneurial, even before I knew what that word meant, and sort of free-spirited, wanted to chart my own course, make my own money. That's always been who I was, but I did not see myself as a beauty founder, which was an experience in itself. The inspiration for Rebundle came by way of being a Black girl that wears braids and was wearing them really frequently at a time in my life where this was the only style that I wanted to wear, and was just reminded of how painful and irritating and uncomfortable plastics and synthetic hair could be. And so I just had this fresh education, new perspective on problem solving and what that looked like in my everyday life, and just had questions about, one, why my scalp was so irritated while wearing braids, and two, what the heck the hair was even made out of. So once I started to dig in and really dig in and didn't get very far, did not get a lot of concrete answers, I was like, okay, this is kind of interesting that there aren't any solutions that I felt were commercially available or scalable, or really addressing the problem from a material standpoint, not just rinse it in apple cider vinegar and it'll make it better. I was like, but why am I rinsing this material? What is it made out of? At the same time, I was really getting involved in learning about the zero waste movement and conscious consumerism and plastics pollution, because of another experience I was having simultaneously, and sort of was intrigued by this idea that hair extensions, one, needed to be safe and non-toxic and non-irritating, and two, needed to be sustainable. And when I didn't find anything on the market that sort of spoke to that need that I could easily access, and by easily access, I mean find a company that was doing it well, had a good product that was tried and true, and I could buy it. I was like, okay, this is super interesting. Let me see, what I can come up with. And so fast forward to early 2021, we launched the first US-made plant-based hair extension brand, and really focused on what more comfort and less waste looks like in this industry, and addressing the issues that I identified with early on, but making this product that I felt and knew was super important to Black culture and Black hair, that it be something that people cared about and wanted to try something different and want something better for themselves.
Yeah. I'm excited to dig into a lot of what you just said there, because, I think your story really illuminates so much of the conversation that we're going to have. But before we get into that, I like to ask my guests what their beauty philosophy is, because, and especially somebody like you who wasn't, didn't know that they were going to get into the beauty industry and kind of found themselves there through a journey of self-discovery. I'm curious, have you crafted a beauty philosophy that you live by?
Maybe I have, and I never thought about it that way. But I consider myself to be a conscious consumer, and I'm really diligent about the brands that I shop, if they have some sort of sustainability initiative, what the materials are made out of, is there end of life solution for that product once I'm done with it. I really do take my time to research those things. And it's usually one of the first things I'm looking for next to, I need an orange swimsuit. And it's like, well, who makes sustainable swimsuits and how are they sustainable? So I would say my beauty philosophy looks like leading with mission-oriented brands and being really, I'm really into brands that talk openly about their journey as a sustainable brand or what that looks like. Are they trying to source more ethical ingredients? Are they swapping out materials? Are they using less of something or reusing more of something? And so I'm really drawn into brands that do those types of things in the beauty space, from skincare to hair care to my clothes and fashion.
Okay. You seem like a very curious person. And everything that you said so far, I think very much points to that. And especially when you identified the problem that Rebundle is a solution for, that being that synthetic hair extensions were irritating towards the scalp and, weren't easily recyclable or, were made with toxic ingredients. I want to dive into this a little bit deeper. And understand the scope of the problem that, you're addressing. So, why don't we start with the sustainability factor of this? You have identified that these, synthetic hair extensions aren't easily recyclable. What does that mean in the day-to-day practice or, for the average person?
So after I did a little bit of digging to understand what synthetic hair was made out of, which primarily is made out of PVC, polyvinyl chloride, as well as some other low-grade acrylics. Then I was like, okay, well, what else are those materials used for and how are those products recycled? And they're one of the harder materials to cycle because of the chemicals, the chloride that's in the product. And so once I understood that and how it was more of a frowned upon material, and I was like, well, how did it make its way on my head and everybody else's head if everybody else seems to know this? And so it became a question of, okay, well, we know that they're in circulation. These materials are in circulation. What does an appropriate waste stream look like while I figure out how to revolutionize the rest of the industry so that it's no longer an option to buy plastic synthetic hair made out of PVC? And so we stood up a recycling program where we collect used and unused plastic synthetic hair so that it can be downcycled responsibly. And so it's not a revenue generator for us. It's simply our way of saying we know that there's wrongdoing, for lack of better words, in the way that this material has entered into this application and what's happening after each person used these cheaper materials, usually once, and then tosses them. How can we at least make sure that we're bringing awareness to this issue by offering people the opportunity to choose sustainability by recycling while we work on the larger issue of changing behaviors and mindsets around what materials should be acceptable to use in and on our bodies, and what does it look like for the future of hair extensions to be not only more clean, but more green.
And then on the point about, you're looking into materials and you're realizing that these are, toxic. Tell me more about that realization and what exactly you mean by that.
It actually scared me. So I ordered a lab analysis on 2 popular plastic synthetic hair brands and had a lab in North Carolina just tell me what's in it. Tell me give me everything that's in the fiber. And I'm non-technical, so I worked with material scientists and chemists to help me understand, like, well, this is used for this and this is used for that. But it couldn't tell us, like, that test didn't tell us the step-by-step process by which those materials are made. It just told us what was in it. And then once I had a better understanding of what some of those chemicals were used in other applications, it was like, again, how did this make it on my scalp and on shelves for me to buy, to install and wear? So it was a really scary realization, and I never wore plastic synthetic hair again, even before I had a had come up with our solution, Braid Better, I just stopped wearing the hair and started telling other people about what I was learning. Before we launched any products, we had an Instagram page, and I was just on there sharing information and asking people about their experience and letting them know, like, I'm invested in understanding what's what in this space, and I'm invested in sharing this information with you so that you can make an informed decision too.
Yeah. And, you also mentioned previously that it was itchy and uncomfortable to wear a lot of these extensions. And so tell me about that problem, because that's like a pretty ubiquitous problem. I feel like a lot of women who wear extensions also share that experience.
Well, my concern was that the reaction that we're experiencing on a topical level was actually a signal or response that our body is rejecting this contact dermatitis, and was more concerned about, well, what is happening internally, sort of at the chemical level, that could cause some adverse health reactions or adverse health conditions that I may not realize for 20 to 30 years from now, or that I'm experiencing on a day-to-day and just not associating it with the hair products that I'm using. So it's definitely still more questions than answers, but I think the important thing to point out is this isn't the first beauty product in history to later discover that it could be causing some adverse health reactions. And so it's really no different in terms of being educated on what is safe and what is not, and what does better look like.
Yeah. This brings up something that I wanted to ask you about anyway, is, we know that toxic ingredients, endocrine disrupting ingredients, this broader class of ingredients that we know to have adverse health risks associated with them. We know that this is a big problem in the beauty industry. Particularly, we know that the burden of toxicity tends to fall on, minorities, women of color. And we've seen that play out again in research again and again. And so, this is a company that is addressing that in a very real and tangible way. So, I'm curious, when you look at the broader scope of this issue, what comes to mind? How does that, I am sure it's incredibly frustrating. How do you grapple with that?
It's funny you should ask. I was just talking about this in another interview before this, but I think when I had that realization, I had to decide which route I wanted to take to see change. I could go the activist, more legislative path, and try to change things from a governmental level, which I still think is incredibly important. Or I could develop a product that has an impact and change today, and advocate for more regulation and oversight and research into what the long-term impact of these products are, while fighting the good fight with a better product. So it's not realistic for me to do both well at the same time. But by sharing what we're doing and how we're doing it and why it's important is my way of spreading awareness around what we think should be acceptable and commonplace in this space, and enabling me to hopefully eventually make the right connections to get more eyes on what has taken place over the last several decades and what type of change we want to see going forward.
I think it's a conversation that I hope is percolating within the beauty industry. And I hope it's something that, we continue to take incredibly seriously. And, it is challenging to kind of decide do we address it internally as a beauty industry, or, do we go that legislative regulatory route? And I think that's something that a lot of people like yourself within the industry grapple with. And it's it's a challenging and complicated and incredibly nuanced conversations to be having, as we discuss the toxicity of the beauty industry, and especially as it relates to people who are more disproportionately impacted by it,
Yeah. And I'm not an expert in the medical and the health implications. I am a consumer and I'm a brand owner advocating for something different and partnering with the parties that are experts in clinical trials and studies to prove or disprove those types of claims. But what we're following is existing data that suggests these types of chemicals and toxins are associated with these types of risk. Therefore, I'm not going to use those anymore. And I encourage others to think twice about using those too until we have more concrete information to support, what we believe to be true.
Yeah. And just a quick follow-up on that, just so our listeners are aware, what are some of those, potentially adverse health effects that are borne out in research? Like what are a few of those side effects that, about?
Endocrine disrupting chemicals is one. Cancers, like breast cancer, which is I think it's the number one cancer among women or maybe in general. And so it's the number one cancer found in women of color, Black women in particular. And then you think about who hair extensions are primarily used and consumed by. So is there a correlation there? We don't know. But it begs the question of if those chemicals are commonly cancer-causing, and this is a product that we wear 4 to 6 times a year, is there something there that we should be looking into? Very similar to how there's been a number of studies, but I think the most recent one around relaxers, adverse health risks to relaxers sort of begs the question of what other type of exposures are we unknowingly receiving or taking on by way of our beauty products that we don't know for sure what those health implications are. So I see them very similarly, and I think it's just a matter of time before there's more data that gives us just better information about these products that are near and dear to our hearts and to our culture.
It's just so sad to think that something that that anybody uses to make themselves feel more beautiful could have, these long-term effects. Because the point of beauty is to literally bring joy to our lives, right? And, to make us feel better about ourselves, and to think that they could have long-term health effects is just so disheartening. And
right. And they do, but it's like, at what cost?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. There's definitely, that question. And, I think all of this information is really helpful for this conversation. And it definitely brings me into hopefully a more lighter part of this broader conversation, which is solutions. You're obviously somebody who is solution oriented. You have crafted a solution for a problem that you saw. Explain to myself and the listeners what this banana fiber is. I believe that's what the hair extensions are made out of. Can you explain this more to me?
Yeah. So Braid Better is made from, the main ingredient is banana fiber that's sourced from the stem of the banana tree. What we do is turn that fiber from straw-like to hair-like, so that it can be used to achieve styles like different braided styles and twists. We do all of that out of a facility that we operate in St. Louis by an all-women-led team. And we are very keen on sourcing safe on the skin, ethically sourced ingredients that not only promote the idea of cleaner and greener hair extensions, but also look and feel just as good as the alternatives.
And, you mentioned earlier one of the big issues that you were experiencing previously was, the afterlife of the synthetic hair. And so, can you explain to me what the afterlife of this product is, of Braid Better?
So we use biodegradable ingredients, which means in the right environment, it'll break down back to its original form. So we don't contribute to single-use plastic pollution like the other plastic hair extensions more specifically. And so that was a really key point that I wanted to make sure we maintained with the product development process, because we could not contribute to the same problem that we were trying to solve. So by introducing a biodegradable alternative, not only do we provide a more comfortable and safe wearing experience, but a more responsible end of life and disposal experience too.
I saw on the website that it's microbiome friendly. I love talking about the microbiome. It's like my favorite subject. I'm curious, why was creating something that, respected the microbiome important to you?
Well, when you think about the largest organ in our bodies, and that being the skin, and how often and how long hair extensions are worn, we wanted to think about, what types of tests and certifications would substantiate the claims of how it is not disrupting at least the outer layer of your microbiome, and in long term not having adverse impacts on your health by absorbing, toxic chemicals. And so there are plenty of types of studies that we have done and still want to do, but the microbiome was one that we felt supported our focus on skin health by way of our scalps. And is an area that is still very new, just like our product, just like the innovation in our space. But it made sense for us to focus on, the main problem that we were trying to solve, which is the reaction that people and wearers have with hair extensions on their scalps by focusing on the microbiome.
Okay. Yeah, I think the conversation around the scalp microbiome in particular is one that deeply fascinates me. And particularly so because so much of the hair care products that people use do disrupt it, so we've been doing quite a lot of damage to our scalp microbiome without really even realizing it. So, I think we have a lot of, ground to cover in terms of, recovering our microbiome and, nurturing it.
Yeah, there's still so much to learn. And I think that all of these developments will take time, but if we sort of do it in bite-sized proportions and think about like what is the highest priority, and making sure that the products are safe on the skin was like highest priority.
So I want to talk about when folks use these every day. What does the braiding process look like? What is the care instructions? How are they different from, normal synthetic instructions? Is there, a learning curve that people have to, adapt to when they start using, these new extensions?
There's an inherent learning curve because there's been, in all of history, most of history, there are two hair extension options on the market, plastic and human. So automatically a learning curve by introducing a plant-based alternative. Texture and material wise, there is a difference. It is not as silky as synthetic hair. It's more akin to human hair in its texture and in its thickness. But once installed, it looks the same. And that was sort of the main point. Like we are definitely really, really focused on demonstrating through our content and through our education around like what those differences are and what to expect, so that is less of a surprise, because if we were making more of the same, then we wouldn't really need to exist. We're doing something different. We make it differently. And so there are some key differences, but at the end of the day, your braids look just as good as they did before. Your scalp feels better than it did before, and you can dispose of it in a much different way than you were before.
Okay. And, I noticed on the website that you have a locator for, folks who are able to braid with us. So what has that process been like?
It's actually one of my favorite projects, or what I spend my time on, connecting with braiders and understanding from their perspective what works and what doesn't. what is clear and what's not clear. And so some braiders find us and they join our directory because they want to offer their services to Rebundle customers. And other times our customers are taking product to them and then they're telling us about it and we talk about it. And then they join the directory so that more of our customers can find them. And then other times will find a braider I want to work with, and we'll ask them to help us with stories, with publications, with editorial work, to show not only how many different types of braiders can use the product, and by that I mean like different levels. There are celebrity braiders, there are people who braid out of their homes, braid out of shops, and like it doesn't really matter where they are in their careers, as long as the product can be braided with, then most of them don't have a problem. And we do our best to educate upfront so that when they get the product, there aren't any surprises.
Okay. I am so illuminated by everything that you just shared with us. It's such incredible innovation. I mean, it's really, really exciting, really cool stuff. I wanted to ask, because this is a fun question that I like to ask guests, what is your beauty hot take? So, this is something that perhaps you feel at odds with the beauty industry. And since you're somebody who, perhaps didn't know they were getting into the beauty industry, I'm curious to see what you have to say.
Okay. I don't think you need a lot of skincare products. I use only what I need, and I think most of the work is done internally, like with an ingestible, and then the outward facing, like you need very few to keep your face clean, keep your skin clean, something to remove dark spots. But like, yeah, I don't overspend on skincare.
I knew you were a mindbodygreen girl. That's a very FBG philosophy.
Yeah, I'll try something here and there, maybe. But for the most part, like, I use what I know works.
Yeah. Okay, so speaking of routines, and, obviously you just shared that your skincare is very minimal, but I want to ask you, what your beauty routine looks like. And that can, of course, include ingestibles, since you just mentioned them. How do you take care of your skin and your hair and, makeup, if you want to touch on that?
Yeah, my skincare is pretty base level. Makeup, I don't wear makeup every day, only for special occasions, I would say. I don't even wear makeup every time I go out. If I feel like it's not even so much putting on, it's taking it off. And I tried Fenty Beauty's Melt Away the other day. A friend of mine had some, and I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, maybe this could work for me because it won't take as long to take off." I hate taking makeup off.
I completely agree with that. I was thinking about that the other day. I was just like, I was sitting on my couch, I was watching TV, and I was like, "You have to take off your makeup." And I was like, I can't get off the couch to do that. It was the hardest thing. And I was like, you literally do this for a living, Alex. Get off the couch and wash your face.
Yeah, it is tough. So if I know I won't feel like taking it off, I will try not to put it on. My hair is pretty much always done. If it's not braided, then I'll have it straightened. I actually just took a braided ponytail down a couple days ago. So I'm going to wear it straight for maybe a couple of weeks. And then what else is included in beauty? My nails are hardly ever done. I am afraid of acrylic. I had a bad experience, and I'm just worried about those chemicals. So been playing around with press-ons a little bit. So yeah, I feel like I care more about like my clothes and shopping sustainably and like trying different brands. I'll spend more time and effort on that than I do my skin, and then my hair is always done. I feel like that's a no-brainer. My hair has to be done.
Yeah. But you did mention ingestibles earlier. Do you have any like favorite supplements, or at least just, types of supplements that you like to take?
I hate to admit it, but the ingestible that I was referring to was birth control. I think birth control is the key to healthy skin. I know it is the detriment of a lot of other things, but
Yeah. You're not wrong. A lot, it clears up a lot of people's skin. All right. So now I want to ask you about how you take care of yourself as a whole. I mentioned this to you earlier before we started, but it's this question can be left to interpretation. It's, truly however you see fit answering it. It can be sleep, it can be movement, it can be mental health, whatever you have.
I definitely have set boundaries with work in the last couple of years that have really helped set me up for success. I have a dog who's sitting in front of me, and so I have to make sure to give him enough attention throughout the day. He's pretty used to my routine, but making sure that we get up, switch rooms, go outside, feed him on a schedule. He sort of helps dictate how much time I spend in one space. And one space like in the house, and also how much time I spend away because I travel a lot. So I would say those two things are definitely like ways that I help myself. I also play a lot of Candy Crush, which the message says swipe the stress away, and that's exactly what I do. I do it all on Candy Crush. I play Candy Crush every day.
I love that. That's so funny. I do also have a few games on my phone that I'll play. I have this like dot one that I like to connect the dots.
Yeah, it's just like mindless stuff that I can do while I'm doing other things, or like how I know I'm done for the day.
Yeah, you wrap it all up. All right, I like it. Well, this was so fun chatting with you, and I learned so much. So thank you so much for taking the time to explain all that you've learned while you've been on this journey, and explain what solutions are out there, and, maybe give us a little hope that there's more solutions on the horizon, and, there's exciting things that are out there that can be discovered, like you've done. So thanks so much for taking the time today. This was so great to chat with you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.